All right, so today we're going to dive into something pretty cool.
Okay.
Stephen Bartlett's The Diary of a CEO, 33 Laws of Business. Have you heard of this one?
Oh, yeah, I've heard a lot about this book, actually.
Yeah, it's really interesting because it's not, your typical, like, business book. It's full of these stories and research, and it's all about these, like, aha moments, where you just, like, rethink success.
I think what's really fascinating about Bartlett is that he comes at it from this, like, really fresh perspective.
Yeah.
He built this hugely successful social media company from scratch when he was only 18.
Wow.
And then he went on to create this massively popular podcast where he interviews all these, like, incredible thinkers.
Yeah, I've listened to that one.
Oh, yeah.
It's pretty good.
It's a really good one.
And the thing I like about him is that he's really open about his own experiences,
Right.
the good, the bad, the successes, the failures.
He's so relatable.
Totally. And that's what makes the book so engaging.
It really is.
So let's unpack the book a little bit. What's
Yeah.
the big idea?
Like, what's the core of it all?
Yeah.
Well, Bartlett believes that there are these fundamental laws that govern success.
Okay.
And they're not just like random tips and tricks. He's identified 33 of these laws.
33, that's a lot.
Yeah, it sounds like a lot. But he argues that if you understand them and apply them, you can like achieve incredible things.
Okay.
Not just in business, but in like any area of life.
So how does he organize all that?
So he breaks them down into these 3 pillars: mindset, story, and philosophy.
Okay.
And the first pillar, mindset, that's all about like cultivating the right mental framework for success.
Got it.
So it's about building a solid foundation of knowledge and skills,
Mm-hmm.
network, resources, and reputation. He calls these like the 5 buckets that you need to fill in the right order.
So it's not just about chasing, money or fame. It's about developing yourself as a person.
Exactly. It's like building a house.
Yeah.
You need a strong foundation before you can like start adding the bells and whistles.
I like that analogy.
Yeah.
So what's the story pillar all about?
Well, it dives into the art of communication and branding. Bartlett argues that you need to like stand out,
Mm-hmm.
connect with your audience, and build a powerful narrative.
Mm.
He actually talks about how useless absurdity can be more defining than useful practicalities.
Wait, what? Useless absurdity?
Yeah.
What's that supposed to mean?
Well, think about it this way. What do you remember more? A perfectly logical argument?
Okay.
Or like a story that made you laugh or feel something unexpected?
The story for sure.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So Bartlett argues that those like unexpected, even absurd elements,
Yeah.
they can help you cut through the noise and make a lasting impression.
Huh. That's pretty counterintuitive.
It is.
But it makes sense.
Yeah.
So we've got the foundation,
Right.
got the story.
Mm-hmm.
What about this philosophy pillar? What's that one about?
So that one focuses on leadership and decision making. Bartlett really emphasizes sweating the small stuff,
Okay.
challenging conventional wisdom, and creating a culture of experimentation. Mm-hmm. He even has this idea of outfailing the competition.
Outfailing.
Yeah.
Like failing more than everybody else.
It sounds a little strange,
Yeah.
but his point is that like failure is inevitable.
True.
So the key is to learn from your mistakes and be willing to experiment more than your competitors.
Gotcha.
That's how you discover those like breakthrough innovations.
I'm starting to see how this all fits together.
Right.
But for someone listening to this right now, why should they care about these 33 laws?
Well, that's the beauty of it.
Yeah.
Bartlett's laws offer a roadmap to success in like any field.
Really?
Yeah, whether you're an entrepreneur, a student, or just someone who wants to live a more fulfilling life,
Mm-hmm.
these principles can actually help you achieve your goals.
So let's get into some specifics.
Okay.
Bartlett's a big advocate for lifelong learning, right?
Oh, absolutely. Remember those like 5 buckets we talked about?
Yeah.
The first 2, knowledge and skills?
Yeah.
Those are your foundation. And the way you fill them is through constant learning. He even has a law called, to master it, you must create an obligation to teach it.
That's interesting. Why does he emphasize teaching so much?
Well, he argues that when you have to explain something to someone else, you're forced to really understand it.
Makes sense.
You can't just skim the surface. You have to get to the core of the concept.
It's like that saying, if you can't explain it simply, you don't understand it well enough.
Exactly.
So you got a story about this, right?
He does. He started this blog where he committed to sharing one business idea every single day.
Every day. Wow.
Yeah. And this forced him to like constantly be learning and finding new ways to explain complex ideas.
That's pretty cool. So learning's key, but then you have to communicate those ideas effectively.
Right.
And Bartlett has kind of a radical take on communication.
Yeah.
He says you must never disagree.
Now, that might sound a little crazy at first,
Far away.
but there's actually, like, solid neuroscience behind it. He interviewed this cognitive neuroscientist who found that disagreement actually shuts down the brain's learning centers.
Wow.
It's like trying to convince someone with, like, a gun to their head.
Wow. So how are you supposed to get your point across if you can't disagree?
Well, he's not saying you can't have different opinions. It's about how you approach those differences.
I see.
Instead of attacking someone's beliefs directly,
Yeah.
he suggests finding common ground and presenting, like, new evidence that supports your view.
Okay.
It's about leading with curiosity and questions.
So it's like understanding where they're coming from and kind of guiding them to a new perspective.
Exactly. And he makes this really interesting point about something called the question behavior effect.
That's that.
So research shows that asking a question,
Uh-huh.
especially one with like a yes or no answer, is actually more effective at influencing behavior than just making a statement.
That's interesting.
Right, because when someone tells you what to do,
Right.
you're more likely to resist. But when they ask you a question, it makes you, like, pause and think,
Makes you think.
and maybe even change your actions.
Yeah.
He uses this example of this boxer who, during training, would, like, push himself to keep running, even when he was in pain.
Oh, wow.
He would ask himself, will you keep going? And answering yes helped him overcome the urge to quit.
It's like having that internal dialogue and finding the strength to push through.
Exactly.
That kind of ties in nicely with another big theme in the book,
Right.
mental toughness.
Absolutely. One of Bartlett's laws is never compromise your self-story.
Mm-hmm.
And he says that mental toughness comes from having evidence that you can overcome adversity.
So it's not about just being naturally strong or resilient. It's about building that belief in yourself.
Exactly. Through experience.
Yeah.
He encourages readers to, like, push themselves even in small ways.
Okay.
To prove to themselves that they can handle challenges.
Interesting.
It's about creating a self-story based on resilience and perseverance.
Okay. This is getting really interesting. But let's switch gears for a minute.
Okay.
Bartlett has a really interesting perspective on habits. He says that fighting them directly is counterproductive.
Right. He's drawing on research about habit loops and how, like, trying to suppress a behavior often leads to this, like, rebound effect. It's like telling yourself not to think about a pink elephant.
Right.
What happens? You immediately picture a pink elephant.
Exactly. So how do you break a bad habit if you can't just fight it head on?
So Bartlett's solution is to focus on replacing bad habits with good ones.
Okay.
He uses the example of his dad quitting smoking.
Oh, yeah. I heard about that.
Yeah, he replaced cigarettes with lollipops.
Lollipops.
Yeah. So instead of focusing on not smoking,
Right.
he shifted his attention to this new, less harmful behavior.
That's pretty clever.
And it worked.
Wow.
So the takeaway is to, like, find a positive alternative
Okay.
that satisfies the same underlying need.
So it's not about willpower or deprivation.
Right.
It's about finding a healthier way to meet that need.
Exactly.
And I bet this applies to all sorts of habits.
Absolutely.
Not just smoking.
Could be anything.
Yeah.
From procrastinating to mindless snacking.
This is really making me rethink my approach to habit change.
It's a game changer.
It is. This is already giving me so much to think about.
Yeah, and we've only just scratched the surface.
I've got a lot more to cover.
There's so much more to explore in Bartlett's 33 Laws.
We're going to need a part 2 to cover all this.
For sure.
We'll pick up where we left off and dive deeper into Bartlett's fascinating world of business and success. Stay tuned, because things are about to get even more interesting.
I can't wait. Welcome back to our deep dive into Stephen Bartlett's 33 Laws of Business.
We're picking up where we left off, exploring those kind of like counterintuitive principles.
Right.
That really make you think about success differently.
Yeah, it's all about challenging those assumptions.
Exactly. So, are you ready to get uncomfortable?
Absolutely. Bring it on.
Okay. Let's jump into Law 19. You must sweat the small stuff.
Ooh, that's a good one. It's a little bit of a head scratcher at first, right?
Yeah, it kind of goes against that whole focus on the big picture advice.
Totally. But Bartlett makes a pretty strong argument that success actually often comes from, like, obsessing over the tiny details.
Right, those things that other people just overlook.
Exactly. It's about finding those, like, marginal gains that add up to a massive advantage.
Over time.
Yeah. And he uses a really cool example from his own life to illustrate this point.
Oh, yeah.
His podcast, The Diary of a CEO.
Right.
They don't just, like, hit record and hope for the best.
No, they're very strategic about it.
Totally. His team, like, meticulously researches every guest. They test titles and thumbnails.
Yeah.
They even optimize the room temperature
That's interesting.
to create the best possible environment for a conversation.
I never thought about the impact of room temperature on a podcast interview.
Right. It's all about creating those optimal conditions for success.
And this principle isn't just limited to podcasting.
It's actually rooted in this Japanese concept called Kaizen.
I've heard of that.
Yeah. It emphasizes continuous improvement through small incremental changes.
So it's not just about efficiency, it's like a whole mindset.
Right.
Yeah.
Of constantly looking for ways to improve.
Exactly. And Bartlett takes it a step further. He says that traditional suggestion boxes,
Yeah.
they often become like dumping grounds for complaints
Oh, totally.
rather than meaningful feedback.
That's so true.
Instead, he says we should create systems that encourage like actionable feedback and empower everyone to contribute to the improvement process.
No matter how small the suggestion might seem.
Right. It's about creating that culture of continuous improvement.
Where everyone feels heard.
Yeah. And he gives some really compelling examples to back this up.
Oh, yeah. Like what?
One that comes to mind is the Toyota production system.
Oh, yeah. That's a classic.
Their success is largely attributed to their focus on Kaizen.
Right. They empower employees at every level to identify and solve problems,
leading to incredible efficiency and quality.
It's pretty amazing how such a simple concept can have such a huge impact.
Totally. It reminds me of something else Bartlett talks about.
What's that?
The importance of embracing failure.
Oh, yeah, that's a big one. His law of outfailing the competition.
It sounds crazy at first.
It does.
But his logic is that failure is essential for learning and innovation.
Right. You can't have one without the other.
So it's not about avoiding failure, it's about failing more intelligently.
Exactly. Failing better than everyone else.
I like that. And he cites companies like Booking.com and Amazon as examples.
Those are some good examples.
They've built cultures that embrace experimentation and rapid iteration.
Right. They're constantly testing new ideas.
Knowing that most will fail.
Yeah, but the ones that succeed will, like, drive massive growth.
It's about having that courage to try new things, to learn from your mistakes.
And to keep iterating until you find what works.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And Bartlett introduces this really cool concept to help with that.
Oh, what's that?
The plan-a-thinker mentality.
I haven't heard that one before.
It means committing fully to your primary plan.
Okay.
And avoiding distractions or backup options.
Like no plan B.
Right. He actually cites research showing that having a plan B can reduce your chances of succeeding with plan A.
Really?
Yeah. It's about that laser focus and unwavering belief in your vision.
That makes sense. But what if you're on the wrong track?
That's a good question.
How do you know when to pivot or abandon an idea?
That's where being brutally honest with yourself comes in.
Yeah.
Bartlett really stresses the importance of recognizing when an idea just isn't working and having the courage to make tough decisions.
Even when it means letting go of something you've invested a lot in.
Right. It's about not being afraid to cut your losses and move on to something better.
He even shares a personal story about shutting down a project that he'd put significant time and money into.
Wow.
It was a difficult decision, but ultimately it was the right one.
It takes a lot of courage to admit defeat.
It does.
Especially when you've poured your heart and soul into something.
But sometimes it's the best way to avoid even bigger setbacks down the road.
For sure. So to help with making those tough decisions, Bartlett introduces this really interesting technique.
Okay, I'm listening.
It's called the pre-mortem.
A pre-mortem? What's that?
So it's like a metaphorical autopsy for a project that hasn't even happened yet.
Okay, that's kind of morbid, but I get it.
It involves imagining that your project has already failed
Uh-huh.
and then working backwards to identify the potential causes.
Oh, that's interesting. So you're like anticipating the risks before they even happen.
Exactly. It's like a mental simulation to
Yeah.
help you mitigate those risks.
That's brilliant. I love that.
And he provides examples of how to apply the pre-mortem technique in all sorts of situations.
Like what?
Choosing a career path,
Okay.
making a major purchase, launching a new product.
It's a really versatile tool.
It is. It's a great tool for critical thinking and avoiding those costly mistakes.
Yeah, those mistakes that can really set you back.
Speaking of mistakes, Bartlett talks about this concept called the ostrich effect.
I've heard of that one.
It's that human tendency to bury our heads in the sand
Oh, yeah. I do that all the time.
when we're faced with uncomfortable truths.
We avoid those difficult conversations.
Right. We ignore warning signs.
We cling to beliefs even when the evidence suggests we might be wrong,
It's like we're trying to pretend the problem doesn't exist.
hoping it'll just magically go away.
which we know it rarely does.
He uses the story of Kodak as a cautionary tale.
Oh yeah, they totally missed the digital photography revolution.
Even though they invented the technology.
It's crazy to think about.
They were so focused on their existing business model
That they failed to adapt.
and ultimately it led to their downfall.
It's a powerful reminder that we can't afford to be complacent.
Or to ignore the signs of change.
We have to be willing to challenge our assumptions and adapt
To the evolving landscape.
Bartlett argues that avoiding those difficult realities just delays the inevitable.
And often makes the consequences even worse.
So he encourages us to embrace discomfort.
To seek out honest feedback.
And to face our blind spots head on.
It's about having the courage to confront the truth even when it's painful.
Totally. And to create a culture where people feel safe speaking up about potential problems.
Without fear of retribution.
Exactly.
Yeah.
He also talks about the importance of remembering the context of the pressure we're facing.
Oh, what does he mean by that?
He distinguishes between aspirational pressure,
Okay.
which comes from pursuing meaningful goals, and compulsory pressure, which feels more like a burden.
I see. So aspirational pressure is like a good stress.
Right. It's about recognizing that the challenges we choose to take on are often a sign of a privileged life.
We have the freedom and resources to pursue our dreams.
Even if it comes with some discomfort.
So we should embrace those challenges.
Lean into the discomfort.
And remember that growth often comes from pushing beyond our comfort zones.
Exactly. It's about reframing our perspective on stress.
And seeing it as a sign that we're on the right track.
But what about when those negative thoughts and anxiety start to creep in?
That's where the concept of negative manifestation comes in.
Negative manifestation.
So it's like focusing on what you don't want actually makes it more likely to happen.
Interesting.
He cites research showing that people who constantly worry about getting sick are actually more susceptible to illness.
Wow. So it's like our brains are looking for evidence to confirm our beliefs.
Even when those beliefs are harmful.
Right. So it's not just about positive thinking. It's about being mindful of the stories we're telling ourselves.
And making sure they're empowering.
Rather than self-sabotaging.
Exactly. He encourages us to shift our focus to what we do want.
To visualize success.
And to cultivate a more positive mindset.
It's about taking control of our thoughts and creating a mental environment that supports our goals.
And this leads us to another really important concept.
What's that?
Understanding the value of our skills.
Okay.
Bartlett makes this interesting point that skills themselves are actually worthless.
Worthless.
It's the context in which they're applied that truly matters.
He uses a story from his own life to illustrate this point.
Right. Something about how his marketing skills were suddenly worth millions.
Yeah, when applied to a different industry.
Exactly. He realized that the perceived value of a skill depends on factors like supply and demand, the specific problem being solved, and the potential return on investment.
So it's not just about what you know, it's about how you apply that knowledge.
And where you choose to focus your efforts.
He encourages us to think beyond traditional job titles.
And to explore how our skills might be applied in unconventional ways.
It's about finding that sweet spot where your unique abilities are both highly valued and in high demand.
That's the key. But all of this takes a lot of discipline and motivation.
True. How do we stay focused and committed to our goals when things get tough?
Well, Bartlett offers this simple but really profound discipline equation to help us understand this.
A discipline equation.
Okay.
I'm intrigued. What's the equation?
He breaks it down into 3 key factors.
Okay.
The value of the goal, the reward of the pursuit, and the cost of the pursuit.
So the value of the goal is like how much we really want it.
Right.
The reward is that satisfaction we get from working towards it.
Yeah.
And the cost is the effort and sacrifice required.
Exactly. And he says that discipline is easier when the value and reward are high.
Okay.
And the cost is low.
So it's about choosing goals that truly matter to us, finding ways to make the journey enjoyable.
And removing any unnecessary obstacles.
So we're setting ourselves up for success by making the path to our goal as smooth and rewarding as possible.
That's the idea. But how do we maintain that motivation over the long haul?
That's the million-dollar question.
Well, Bartlett brings up something you might not expect in a business book.
What's that?
The importance of recognizing our own mortality.
Whoa, that's getting pretty deep.
It is. But he argues that understanding our limited time on Earth can actually be a powerful motivator.
Okay, I can see that.
It helps us prioritize what truly matters and avoid wasting precious time on things that don't contribute to our fulfillment.
It's about living with intention and making every moment count.
Exactly. He encourages us to make conscious choices about how we spend our time and energy.
and to focus on creating a legacy we'll be proud of.
And this leads us to one of the final concepts we'll explore in this deep dive.
Okay.
The idea of building a company that feels like a cult.
Now, before anyone freaks out,
Right.
he's not talking about anything nefarious or manipulative.
No, not at all.
He's talking about cultivating a culture of shared passion, purpose, and unwavering belief in the company's mission.
It's about that feeling of belonging and shared purpose.
He argues that the most successful companies often start out feeling like cults.
Because the founding team is so deeply invested in their vision.
They're willing to work tirelessly to sacrifice personal comfort.
And to challenge conventional wisdom.
Because they believe so strongly in what they're building.
He uses Apple as a prime example.
Oh yeah, their employees are known for their devotion to the company.
And it's
So Bartlett identifies 4 key elements of this cult-like company culture.
Okay, what are they?
A strong sense of belonging, a shared mission, an inspirational leader, and a healthy us versus them mentality.
It's about creating an environment where people feel connected to the company's purpose.
And are inspired to do their best work.
But he also stresses the importance of having clear values and expectations.
Right, and addressing any behaviors that undermine the culture.
That's where his concept of the inconsistent leader comes in. Oh yeah, that's a good one. He argues that the best leaders are those who adapt their style to the needs of each individual team member.
So it's not about being a one-size-fits-all leader.
Right. It's about understanding the unique motivations of your team and tailoring your approach to get the best out of everyone.
He cites Sir Alex Ferguson again, the legendary Manchester United manager.
Oh yeah, he was known for his ability to connect with each player individually.
Even those considered superstars.
Right. He knew when to be tough, when to be compassionate, and when to give players space to flourish. It's about being flexible and adaptable as a leader.
And recognizing that there's no single right way to lead.
And this brings us back to that idea of embracing marginal gains.
Ah, the power of those small incremental improvements.
That add up over time.
It's all connected.
It is. It's all about creating a culture of continuous improvement.
Both at the individual and organizational level.
Bartlett tells this great story about Sir Dave Brailsford.
Who's that?
He transformed the British cycling team from mediocrity to dominance.
Oh, wow. How do you do that?
By obsessing over those tiny details.
Like what?
From the riders' diets and sleep habits to the aerodynamics of their bikes.
He looked for improvements everywhere.
Everywhere.
And that approach led to an unprecedented string of victories.
It proved the power of sweating the small stuff.
It's incredible what you can achieve when you commit to that level of detail.
Bartlett encourages us to apply this principle in all areas of our lives.
Our businesses, our health, our relationships.
It's about recognizing that those tiny changes, when consistently applied, can lead to extraordinary results.
This is all such great stuff.
It is.
But we're running out of time.
Oh, no.
We'll have to pick up where we left off in part 3.
Okay, sounds good.
We'll explore those final few laws and wrap up this incredible deep dive into the world of Stephen Bartlett. Stay tuned. All right, so we're back for our final deep dive into these 33 laws of business.
It's been quite a journey.
It has. We've learned so much.
So much.
And in this last part, I really want to focus on one of the most important things for any successful venture.
Okay. What's that?
Building a thriving company culture.
Oh, yeah, that's huge.
Bartlett is really adamant about this.
Like, he's really serious about it.
He uses this great analogy of a barrel of apples.
Okay.
Where, just one bad apple can spoil the whole bunch.
I've heard that one before.
It really makes you think about how important it is to address any negative behaviors or attitudes.
Right. You gotta nip those things in the bud.
Exactly. And he doesn't shy away from the tough stuff. He actually advocates for firing toxic employees.
Even if they're high performers.
Yep. Even then.
That's a bold move.
It is. It seems kind of counterintuitive, right?
Yeah. Why would you let go of someone who's contributing to the bottom line?
But Bartlett argues that the long-term damage caused by a toxic person far outweighs any short-term gains.
So it's about protecting the team.
The whole team. Prioritizing their well-being.
He's got some personal stories about this, right?
He does. He talks about times when he's had to let people go.
Even if he liked them.
Even then. And it was tough, but necessary.
It shows that building a strong culture sometimes requires making those hard choices.
And on the flip side, he really emphasizes the importance of hiring well.
Oh, yeah. Getting the right people on the bus.
Exactly. He actually says that every company is essentially a recruitment company.
Really?
Think about it. Your success hinges on your ability to attract and retain top talent.
Yeah. People who align with your values and vision.
It's not just about finding people with the right skills.
It's about finding people who fit the culture you're trying to create.
Exactly. And remember that framework he talks about for building a cult-like company culture.
Oh, yeah, but in a positive way.
In a good way.
Right.
It's about creating that strong sense of belonging, a shared mission,
Mm.
an inspirational leader, and a healthy us versus them mentality.
It's like that feeling of being part of something bigger than yourself.
And he's clear that it's not about blind obedience or exclusivity.
It's about fostering a deep connection and purpose among team members.
Making people passionate about their work.
Feeling like they're making a real difference.
And he also talks about establishing clear values and expectations.
And consistently reinforcing those values.
Through stories, rituals, symbols.
It's about making those values come alive.
And making sure everyone's on the same page.
He gives those examples of companies like Google and Zappos.
With their legendary cultures.
They've put a lot of effort into creating environments where employees feel valued and supported.
And inspired.
Mm.
Okay, so let's talk about leadership for a minute.
Okay.
Bartlett challenges that whole idea of the consistent leader.
He says there's no one-size-fits-all approach.
Exactly. The best leaders are the ones who can adapt their style
to the needs of each team member.
It takes a lot of emotional intelligence.
Understanding what motivates different people.
Remember Sir Alex Ferguson?
Oh yeah, he was a master at that.
Tailoring his approach to each player.
Knowing when to be tough, when to be supportive, when to give them space.
It's about being flexible and adaptable.
Recognizing that what works for one person might not work for another.
And of course, we can't talk about leadership without talking about delegation.
Oh yeah, that's a big one.
As a leader, your job isn't to do everything yourself.
Right. You need to build a team.
A team of capable people who can execute your vision.
It's about empowering your team to make decisions.
And take ownership.
He says figure out your strengths and weaknesses.
Then build a team that complements your skills.
So you can leverage the collective strengths of the team.
To achieve something amazing. Oh, and one last thing.
Let's...
Don't forget to celebrate the wins.
Oh, yeah. That's so important.
It's easy to get caught up in the grind and forget to acknowledge our accomplishments.
Celebrating wins helps maintain morale.
Reinforces positive behaviors, creates momentum.
It's about taking the time to appreciate the hard work of the team.
So there you have it, our deep dive into Stephen Bartlett's 33 Laws of Business.
It's been a fascinating journey.
It really has. We've explored his unconventional but incredibly insightful principles for achieving success.
From embracing failure to sweating the small stuff to building a strong culture and leading with adaptability.
His book offers a powerful framework for navigating the complexities of business and life.
If you're feeling inspired to shake things up and achieve more.
Remember his emphasis on lifelong learning, constant adaptation, and challenging conventional wisdom.
He leaves us with this really interesting question.
About building a business that feels like a cult.
But in a positive way, of course.
With shared passion and mission.
It's something to think about as you apply these laws to your own journey.
We hope you've enjoyed this deep dive.
And that you're walking away with valuable insights.
And a renewed sense of purpose.
Until next time, keep learning, keep growing.
And keep pushing the boundaries of what's possible.